The chamber was vast, carved from obsidian and lit by the sterile glow of suspended crystal orbs, yet it felt stifling to Commander Varix. He stood at the center of the High Council's circle, his figure a broken silhouette beneath the towering spires of alien statesmen. His once proud armor hung loose, scorched and dented, the left pauldron missing entirely. Where his arm had been, a crude cauterized stump remained, hidden beneath a strip of cloth already dark with dried fluids. His mandibles twitched when he tried to steady his breathing. He had fought in 8 campaigns across 3 galaxies, but none had left him trembling in front of his own kind. The council regarded him with a mixture of curiosity and unease. 12 elders, cloaked in deep violet, leaned forward on their thrones. The silence stretched. Finally, Chancellor Rozek, voice smooth as steel, broke it. "You are the sole return from the 5th Expeditionary Legion. 30,000 went with you, only one stands before us. Tell us why." Varix raised his gaze, meeting their eyes one by one. Once, he would have delivered a sharp military report, listing maneuvers, supply shortages, casualty figures. But such words felt absurd, even insulting. How could he reduce what he had witnessed to numbers? His throat tightened, and when he spoke, his voice was low, almost reluctant. "You sent us to break them. You told us humanity was primitive, reckless, scattered. I believed you. My soldiers believed you. We were wrong." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Some counselors scoffed, others leaned closer. Rozek's expression did not change. Wrong in what way? Varix closed his remaining hand into a fist. He saw them again, the humans, merging from the smoke and mud of the battlefield. Gaunt faces streaked with ash, eyes hollow yet burning. His voice cracked as he forced the words out. "They do not fight as we do. They do not fear loss as we do. When one falls, another rises from the corpse. When 10 fall, 100 advance over their bodies. We thought endurance was a measure of flesh. To them, it is a measure of will." The council chamber fell still. A young counselor, too inexperienced to mask disdain, sneered. "You suggest our warriors, bred for centuries of conquest, were undone by a species barely out of its cradle." Varix's mandibles clenched. The scar across his chest throbbed with memory. He spoke more sharply now, anger spilling through. His grief, barely out of their cradle. Yes. Yet they learned to turn their cradle into a forge. They have a talent for suffering that no doctrine can prepare us for. You do not understand until you stand across from them and watch them smile through bloodied teeth. The counselor recoiled, his arrogance shaken, but others pressed forward eagerly, wanting more. Varix sensed the hunger in their silence, the desire for confirmation, for detail. Part of him wished he could remain silent, lock the horrors behind his teeth forever. But silence would be another lie, another betrayal to the thousands who had died screaming under human fire. He drew a breath. "Our first engagement was on the trenches of Karin Ridge. We scouted it as routine. Reports suggested scattered resistance. Yet the moment we advanced, the earth itself seemed to come alive. Men rose from beneath piles of corpses, human corpses. They had lain among their own dead for days, masked in stench, waiting for us to come near. When they fired, the first rows of my soldiers fell before they even knew a battle had begun." Several counselors shuddered. Another elder leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Deception, ambush, primitive tactics. It's hardly remarkable." No, Varix's voice was iron now. Not deception. Devotion. They lay with their own dead. Let vermin crawl across them. Let hunger gnaw at their bellies, just to strike once, at the perfect moment. Tell me which of our warriors would endure such filth willingly. Tell me which of us would crawl into a grave before the battle even begins. The council fell quiet. Varix swallowed, his throat dry as ash. He knew he had to continue, though. Each word carved deeper into him. My soldiers fought bravely. They were disciplined. But for every human that fell, 3 more seemed to rise. They did not retreat. They did not surrender. They fought until the ground was black with blood, and the smoke so thick you could taste it in your lungs. And when we thought they were broken, when we advanced to claim victory, they crawled through the mud and dragged us down with bare hands, tearing at armor with teeth if nothing else remained. Razak's eyes glinted cold. And yet here you stand, Commander. How is it you survived where all others did not? The question hung like a blade. Varix felt every eye cut into him, piercing his armor, his scars, his soul. His mandibles clicked once before he spoke, almost a whisper. Because they let me. The chamber erupted. Gasps, hisses, curses filled the air. One counselor rose, robes whipping. Impossible. Humans are savages. Why spare a commander of the enemy? Varix shut his eyes, and behind them he saw that face again, the last soldier he encountered before the retreat dissolved into slaughter. The human was young, barely grown, his body mangled, ash smeared across his skin. Yet his lips curled into a smile, crimson-stained teeth flashing as he whispered words Varix could not forget. Tell them hell is already ours. He opened his eyes to the chamber's fury. But his voice, though quiet, cut through it like a blade. They spared me because they wanted me to return, to tell you what I have seen, to make sure you know what waits if you send another army. They made me into their message. The uproar faltered. For the first time, the chamber seemed uncertain. Voices caught between outrage and dread. Razak alone remained composed, though his eyes flickered with something that might have been doubt. Varix stood straighter, though his body ached. His words were ragged, but each one carried the weight of truth. You asked why only I returned. I tell you now, I was chosen. Not by my strength, nor by my cunning, but by their will. The humans want you to know. They want you to fear. And you should. Silence followed, thick as smoke after battle. No one moved. No one spoke. The counselors stared at him, seeing not their commander, but something else, something marked, something carrying the shadow of humanity itself. Varix's gaze swept the chamber one last time. His voice dropped to a near growl, soft but unyielding. The war front was not a battlefield. It was hell, and the humans. They were its keepers. The silence deepened, not broken this time, as though the council itself feared what answering might awaken. Varix did not pause long after his last words. The chamber remained still, but the silence carried a demand more forceful than any spoken command. They wanted details. They wanted to peel open the wounds he carried and examine every vein of horror beneath. He obliged, not because they deserved it, but because the truth weighed too heavily for him to keep buried. Karin Ridge was only the beginning, he said, his voice hoarse yet steady. The real war began when we believed we had already won. We pressed our advantage with artillery, with plasma bombardments, with the precision our legions are known for. The humans should have broken. Their cities were in ruins, their supply lines fractured. Yet when we advanced, they did not scatter. They clung to the ruins like vermin and turned each shattered street into a fortress. He remembered the march across blackened stone, the smoke that choked the sky, the bitter smell of charred flesh that no respirator could keep out. His soldiers had been confident then, voices firm, strides steady. They had believed in doctrine. Doctrine meant control, and control meant victory. But nothing about the battlefield resembled control. They dug themselves into the earth, he continued. Trenches, bunkers, hidden passages carved through the bones of their dead cities. We stormed them by the thousands. At first, it seemed simple. They fell. They bled. They burned like any other enemy. But when we looked closer, we saw something none of us understood. They refused to retreat. Even when half their number lay dead, the other half held ground with knives and stones. Even when we breached their defenses, those too injured to rise strapped explosives to their bodies and crawled forward. One counselor's voice trembled as he interrupted. "You mean to say they fought without hope, without strategy?" Varex's mandibles twitched in what might have been the shadow of a bitter smile. "No, that is the mistake my officers made. They thought it hopeless madness. It was not. It was a strategy more alien than anything I have seen, to make pain itself their weapon. They turned their suffering into a shield, their deaths into traps. Every victory we claimed cost us twice as much in fear. Their madness was deliberate, and it worked." He saw it again, the plasma fire cutting down wave after wave of human soldiers. Yet the survivors charging forward through the smoke, eyes wide with something feral. His soldiers began to whisper then. He remembered the tremor in their voices as they spoke in the barracks, believing their commander could not hear. They called the humans ghosts, demons, beasts who did not know how to stop. One night he had found his Lieutenant Merrick staring at his reflection in a cracked visor, hands trembling. "They do not care if they die," the lieutenant whispered. "How do you fight what welcomes the grave?" Varix had no answer then. He had none now. He pressed on. We brought heavier machines, siege walkers, thermal cannons, airstrikes. Entire districts leveled under our fire. We reduced the land to ash, and still they came. I watched men stagger out of firestorms, skin blackened, still clutching rifles as if their hands were welded to them. I watched them hurl themselves into the legs of our walkers, strapping grenades to their chests, detonating themselves to bring machines crashing down. The explosions killed them instantly. They did not hesitate. Not once. The council chamber was hushed, each word hanging like smoke above their heads. Even Rozek leaned forward now, gaze unblinking. Varix's voice sank lower, the weight of memory pulling each sentence like lead. "My soldiers broke before I did, not from wounds, from terror. They had fought in countless wars, slain countless foes, but this was different. Every alien we had fought before understood limits. Even predators know when to retreat, when to lick wounds. The humans did not. There was no limit. When we slaughtered them, they came back. When we starved them, they fought hungry. When we froze them, they fought shivering. When we burned them, they fought burning. There was nothing to measure, no threshold we could predict. They fought until we could no longer imagine victory." The counselor's voice quavered. "And what of you, Commander? Did you not rally them?" Varix met the question with a stare as sharp as broken glass. "I tried. I told them victory was a matter of discipline, that the humans would break if we pushed harder. But each charge drained us more than them. Each night, more soldiers deserted. Some slit their own throats rather than march back into that fire. And every deserter left the rest weaker. It was not the humans' weapons that destroyed us. 'Twas their refusal to fall when they should have. That refusal poisoned the hearts of my men until they no longer believed." The chamber's silence deepened, every elder pale, as though his words summoned the stench of blood into the air itself. Varix's breathing grew ragged as he pushed through the last memory. The day we realized the truth was the day our line collapsed. We had cornered a company of them, cut off from supply, surrounded in ruins. They should have surrendered. Instead, they broke open their own fuel cells. They laughed as they ignited themselves. The fire swallowed half a regiment of my warriors before we understood what they had done. That was when I knew we were not fighting soldiers. We were fighting a species that had made suffering its greatest weapon. He stopped then, his throat burning, his hand trembling at his side. The counselors could not meet his eyes. They had wanted a report, a clean explanation for failure. What he had given them was contagion, a sickness of the soul. He let the silence stretch before speaking once more. Softer now, as if confessing rather than testifying. You ask why they cannot be defeated? The answer is simple. They are willing to become the very thing we fear most. Where we cling to survival, they embrace destruction. Where we avoid the abyss, they leap into it. And when they rise from the flames, it is not as men, but as something far worse. His words lingered, heavy and unrelieved. Then he bowed his head, and for the first time since his return, his voice faltered. That is what broke us. Not their numbers, not their weapons, their will. And it will break you too, if you do not heed my warning. No one spoke. The council chamber was a tomb, and every elder within it now carried the shadow of Koran Ridge in their silence. Varix did not realize how quiet the chamber had grown until he heard his own breathing echoing off the obsidian walls. The council sat as statues, every eye fixed on him, some with disbelief, others with dread. He had already given them more than they wanted, but the truth had not yet been spoken in full. He could not stop now. Our army did not collapse in one battle, he said, his voice brittle but steady. It dissolved piece by piece, like flesh rotting from the bone. At first it was fear whispered at night, then doubt spoken aloud, then discipline unraveling under the weight of a war we could no longer understand. The humans never gave us space to recover. They struck by day, by night, when we expected them, when we did not. There was no pattern, only the certainty that wherever we marched, they were already waiting. He remembered the nights most vividly, the way silence in the dark became unbearable. Every shadow, a threat. They came to us in the dark. He continued. We set sentries. We deployed scanners. We ringed our camps with turrets. It did not matter. They moved like phantoms, using the ruins to hide their approach. They slit throats before alarms could sound, and when the alarms did cry out, we found half our supplies gone and the corpses of our own soldiers left hanging as trophies. One counselor hissed in disbelief, but Varix pressed on. Do you understand what that does to men? To wake in the night and see your comrade's body displayed like a banner, his eyes carved out, his weapon gone. To know that no place is safe. No rest is secure. The strongest warriors I knew began to break. They stopped sleeping. They jumped at every sound. When dawn came, they stared at the horizon with hollow eyes, knowing it would bring only more slaughter. He thought of Merrick again, his loyal lieutenant, the man who had once been unshakable. He had found him one morning seated by the camps. Perimeter, his weapon discarded, his claws stained with his own blood. Merrick's voice had been flat, devoid of fire. I dreamed they were in my head, he had said. I saw them standing over me, smiling as I begged them to finish it. When I woke, I realized I wanted it to be real. By the next night, Merrick was gone. His body found hanging beside the supplies the humans had stolen. Varix's hand trembled as he remembered it. He clenched it into a fist, forcing the memory into words. Humans did not just fight us. They dismantled us. Every raid, every scream in the dark, every body displayed, they were not random acts. They were blades cutting away at our will. My men feared not death, but the inevitability of facing humans again. And when soldiers fear that, they stop being soldiers. His voice hardened as he relived the moment his army truly broke. It was at the River Kale. We had fortified the banks, expecting a decisive battle. My men still believed we could hold there, that discipline might steady us one last time. The humans came at dawn, not in thousands, not in overwhelming numbers, barely a few hundred. They were starving, bleeding, limping from wounds half healed. Yet they charged as though the gods themselves carried them. My soldiers fired volley after volley. The humans fell in heaps, but the rest kept coming. Some crawled on broken legs, dragging rifles through the mud. Others hurled themselves into the river, weighed down with charges, detonating beneath our bridges. And when we thought it madness, when we thought they must finally collapse, they screamed their defiance, not in words, but in howls that carried across the water. Shaking the hearts of everyone who heard them, he saw it again, the humans, clawing forward even as their bodies gave out, their blood turning the river crimson. His own men began to falter, shots growing wild, formations unraveling. Then one regiment broke ranks and fled. Others followed. Within minutes, his entire defense dissolved into chaos. I tried to rally them, Varric said, his voice cracking. I stood in the riverbank, bellowing orders until my throat bled. But nothing stopped the panic. Men who had fought a dozen campaigns fell to their knees, screaming, throwing down their weapons. Some fled into the water and drowned rather than face another charge. It was no longer an army. It was prey scattering before the predator. The chamber was silent. No one dared interrupt now. Varric forced himself onward, though every word reopened wounds. By nightfall, our line was gone. 29,000 soldiers reduced to a few hundred, retreating into the hills, hunted at every step. We had no supplies, no order, no hope. The humans gave us no rest. Each night another group vanished, taken in the dark, until at last I stood among less than 50. And then he faltered, his voice barely a whisper. Then they surrounded us. He saw it still, the ring of fire in the night, the humans closing in with their ragged uniforms and blood-streaked faces. They did not jeer. They did not taunt. They advanced in silence, the fire reflecting in their eyes, until his soldiers broke entirely. Some fought desperately, screaming in terror. Others begged for mercy. Most simply dropped their weapons and waited for death. Varric swallowed hard. They killed them all. Not with cruelty, not with haste, but with precision. Each man one after the other. And when it was over, I alone remained. A commander with no army, a leader of ashes. A counselor's voice, trembling, pierced the silence. And why did they not kill you too? Varric's mandibles twitched, his eyes sinking into memory. He remembered the human who stepped forward that night. A soldier no older than a boy, his body scarred, his breath wheezing, yet his eyes burning with something unyielding. He had walked up to Varric, raised his weapon end, then lowered it. He leaned close, his words a whisper Varric could never forget. Go, tell them what you saw. Tell them what waits if they come again. Varric's voice grew hollow, stripped of all command. They spared me because I was no longer a commander. I was their messenger. Their weapon made of memory. The chamber quivered in silence, the weight of his confession pressing on every counselor. Varric bowed his head, his body trembling with exhaustion. You sent 30,000. You have one left. And he brings back nothing but a warning. His words settled like ash over the chamber. None moved. None spoke. The silence was absolute, as though the entire council feared that even speaking might summon the specter of the humans into their midst. The chamber felt colder now, though no temperature had changed. Varric stood alone, his figure hunched but unbroken, the silence around him suffocating. The council's eyes were daggers, some sharp with doubt, some dulled with fear, others softened by something he could not name. He could feel their breathless hunger for denial. They wanted him to tell them it was exaggeration, that his tale was madness born of trauma. Part of him wished he could, but the truth clung to him as stubbornly as the scars etched into his carapace. Chancellor, Razik's voice cut through the silence like steel drawn across stone. You claim they spared you as a message. You claim their strength lies not in weapons, but in will. Then tell us this. Commander, what is the meaning of such a message? What do the humans want us to believe? K-Rex raised his head slowly, his one good eye narrowing. They want you to understand the futility of your arrogance. They want you to know that you cannot outlast them, cannot outbleed them, cannot scare them into submission. They want you to tremble before even considering war again. And if you do not, if you send more legions, they will grind them into dust as they did mine. A counselor bristled. You would have us surrender to primitives. Primitives. Varix barked a laugh, harsh and bitter. I watched men ignite themselves to topple our machines. I watched them crawl through fire, grinning with their teeth burned away. There is nothing primitive about that. It is something far older, far deeper. It is survival stripped to its marrow. Call it primitive if it comforts you. But understand this. It is also unstoppable. Murmurs rippled across the chamber. Some counselors shook their heads, unwilling to yield. Others leaned back as though retreating from the weight of his words. Only Rozek remained still, his eyes dark, his face unreadable. Your testimony reeks of fear, Rozek said evenly. Perhaps you have mistaken cowardice for wisdom. Varix stiffened, his chest heaving with a surge of anger he had tried to bury. Cowardice. His voice thundered across the chamber, rising for the first time since he began. I watched 30,000 warriors die screaming in the mud. I fought until my arm was burned from my body. I faced an enemy that smiled while drowning in their own blood. Do not speak to me of cowardice, Chancellor. I brought back the truth you sent us to find. It is not fear, it is the only gift my men left me. The council shrank into silence again, struck by the fury in his tone. His mandibles clicked as he fought to steady his breath, but he would not apologize. He could not. He let his voice fall. Quieter, each word deliberate, waited. You still do not understand. You think humanity is a rival to be crushed. They are not. They are a fire. And fire does not yield because you command it. It burns until there is nothing left. One of the older counselors leaned forward, voice trembling. If what you say is true, Commander, then there is no hope for us. What, then, is to be done? For the first time since returning, Varix hesitated. His gaze dropped to the ground as though searching for an answer in the cracks of the floor. He did not want to speak it, but the truth gnawed at him, insistent. Do not fight them, he whispered at last. Do not provoke them. Do not awaken what sleeps within their species. For once humanity learns to love war as we do conquest, they will not stop at defense. They will come for us, for all of us. The words struck the chamber like thunder. Several counselors flinched, others stiffened, in denial. The thought alone was poison, that the hunters could one day become prey. Rozek's expression did not change, but his voice grew colder still. And you, Commander, what do you want? Do you come as prophet or as broken soldier, demanding we tremble before your nightmares? Varix lifted his gaze again, his one remaining eye glowing with the memory of firelight reflected in human eyes. I come as both. I am broken, yes, but in that brokenness lies clarity. I no longer see humanity as prey, nor as rivals, nor even as conquerors. I see them as what they truly are, the children of hell itself, and hell does not forgive arrogance. A heavy silence fell once more. The chamber felt smaller now, its obsidian walls pressing inward, as if the truth he carried threatened to collapse it. He thought again of the human who spared him, the boy with bloodied teeth and a whisper like a curse. That face had not left him, would never leave him. Its eyes haunted his dreams, its words etched into his mind. They told me to warn you, he said, softer now, though the chamber strained to hear every word. So I will. If you return to their world, you will not return again. If you send more legions, you will bury them under rivers of blood. And if you dare to make humanity your enemy, you will awaken a storm that will scour every banner from the stars. That is the truth I carry back from the war front. That is the truth branded into me by the last soldier I saw, smiling as flames consumed his body. His words still echo in me. He drew a ragged breath, his voice breaking into a whisper. Tell them hell is already ours. No one moved. No one breathed. The chamber was a tomb, and in it, the council sat among the ashes of 30,000 warriors. Their silence, a monument to the terror one survivor had brought home. Varric stood tall now, though his body trembled with exhaustion. His scars burned. As though freshly made, his mind a battlefield he could never leave. Yet his voice was steady as he delivered the last of his truth. You sent me to conquer men. I return to tell you what men truly are. They are not prey. They are not beasts. They are not soldiers. They are the keepers of hell. And if you do not listen to me, if you dismiss this as weakness, then you will one day find yourself standing where I stood, watching your world burn with them, smiling in the flames. The silence stretched so long, it felt eternal. Finally, Varric lowered his head, his body folding under the weight of memory. I am the last witness, he whispered, and I will carry their message until death claims me. The chamber remained frozen, but in the eyes of the council, something had shifted. Doubt no longer shielded them. Fear had taken root. And though no words were spoken, Varric knew that the humans had already won their second victory not on the battlefield, but here, in the heart of his people's empire. Through him, he closed his eyes, and for the first time since his capture, he let the memory of fire wash over him without resistance. The human boy's face rose before him once more. And Varric whispered into the silence, as much to himself as to the council. The war front was hell, and I walked out only to tell you so.